Matt, so thanks so much for joining me on an N of One. It's always such a pleasure to have people like you on the show because we get to talk through, you've had such a diverse background. We're going to talk through your sort of transition from academia to applied. It's going to be a lot of fun. As you know, we live in a field where we tend to talk about the every person and these broad, psychological concepts that apply to a lot of people. But there's a lot of value in just individual stories. And so thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really excited.
So I know you know the format. We got to go all the way back, man. We got to go all the way back. I want to talk about 7-year-old Matt. Like when you were 7 or 8, like what did you think you were gonna do in life?
It's funny because my answer to that question is similar to the last guest you had. I was also a Top Gun fan. I also thought I wanted to be like a fighter pilot. I remember like getting inside of a sleeping bag, like feet first, like pretending I was in the cockpit of a plane. So I don't know if there's something to it. So yeah, there was some of that. But the other big part of my life, even that young, was music. I remember getting like a Dave Matthews Band CD for Easter or something in my Easter basket when I was in fourth grade. Um, and like something just like made me come alive. I don't know, the drumming, the just the whole sound of it. I remember feeling like, wow, I love this feeling of music and what it's doing to me. I also remember pretty young, pretty 7 years old in elementary school the like the high school drum line came to my school to give like a concert or something in the gym. And I remember also then thinking like I don't know what that is, but this
But
is
I
amazing.
want it.
I want to do that, whatever that is. So like even pre-concept of what any of that was, there was something there for me, music. Um, and that's kind of it. Like I was definitely not into sports. I was not great at sports, especially team sports. I really hated team sports. I didn't like the performance aspect and like people watching me do things. I was good at some individual things, like swimming. Sort of always kind of preferred to like kind of do it my own way or kind of do my own thing and not have people relying on me. That's the anxious attachment coming out, I guess. But yeah, there was yeah, no real sports, but music definitely took hold early on for me.
And what about at school? I mean, were you a science kid? Were you an English kid? Was school motivated
Yeah.
for you or not really?
Yeah, yeah. I was definitely motivated by school. Some of that is because in my family, schools, education was very important. My dad has a PhD in some neurological optics or something crazy. He like studied vision. And my mom is in higher education. She herself was a teacher in school, and so like school was very important. I mean, my dad was military, so we moved around a lot, but the number one thing for them was always finding the best schools. And so I think, education and learning was something that I enjoyed. Um, but I don't know if I had like a favorite subject. I was good at English. I enjoyed writing. I wrote in my younger years, like I wrote a lot of poetry. I kind of loved philosophizing about life and things like that. I wasn't great at math until I took stats. But I think also stats to me is also like language more than
Mhm.
anything else. And so yeah, I think I appreciated subjects that had depth to them, right? Like writing, English. I took AP psychology, and so that I started thinking, wow, there's like things to discover about life. I think even the music side of things was like there's like a deeper side to life that you can't learn with a formula or even in a book, right? So I really appreciated the subjects that allowed me to feel things and sort of see deeper into life. Yeah, even from an earlier age, I think.
And talk to me about, I mean, you said AP Psych. In high school, did you have a sort of a notion that psych was going to be a thing, or that was just an AP class that you took? Like, where did you
Yeah.
think you were headed?
Well, I think I always enjoyed like my friends would come to me as the person who could like intuit, things that were going on, right? Like I was definitely known as maybe more the emotional guy, right? I had um I had no problem being vulnerable. I had no problem talking about myself and the self in general. Um, and so, but it wasn't like I knew that that was psychology. I didn't really know that that's what it was. And so taking AP Psych was like, you know, it wasn't on purpose. It was just what AP classes can I take to like increase my GPA and also get college credit. And, I remember being kind of excited about it, but I didn't know what we would be learning. I don't think I even had a notion that like psychology meant therapists or anything, right? I think I really just went into it because it was another AP class that I could use to boost my GPA. So no, there was no notion that that's what I wanted to do. I mean, if anything, like in college, I also took AP computer science, right? And there was like parts of me that wanted to be a programmer, and I was in the marching band and doing like lots of really interesting world music ensembles and stuff. Even in high school, we had like a pretty big music program, and there were parts of me that thought, maybe music. So I really had no plan um, at all, and yeah, psychology just sort of happened by accident, I feel like.
And so you were sort of following your interests, of which there were a lot, right? It sounds like there was sort of a breadth of interests that sort of characterized how you sort of interacted with high school. Was like, hey, if I'm attracted to that, I'm going to go towards it. If I don't feel that attraction, I'm not going to spend as much time with it.
Sure, definitely. I think like I was always going on like I liked subjects that felt like there was discoveries to be made, right?
Mhm.
Like I liked science classes because you could sort of like arrive at an aha moment with
Mhm.
an experiment or a demonstration or even like solving a formula in physics to like get at the answer to, yeah, which train is going to reach the track for whatever, these sorts of things. It felt to me like there's something to be discovered and there's like a way to get to that through something. And I liked those subjects. And I think that, I mean, music is also that, right? You sort of like start with a blank page with a bunch of, colored dots on it. And like you end with this piece where everything is working together. And there's moments in a piece or a composition or a marching band show where there's like some transcendent arrival of something, right? I mean, it's a little esoteric, but that's sort of what I liked. I liked the feeling that there was something to be discovered, and psychology definitely also then had that element, kind of the human part of that, where there's like mysteries of the human experience to be discovered through not just thinking about them or through intuition. There's like ways we can go about learning these things. And there's even like a whole major at college that I could do that too. Like this to me was like very attractive. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I hear you on the sort of like it wasn't quite philosophy, right? You were interested in sort of the depth and interest of things, but you wanted that to be not sort of navel gazy. You wanted something. You wanted some activity. Discovery is a very interesting word, right? Because it's very active. Uh,
hmm
there's
hmm
like a desire to like go into it.
Yes, right. I didn't want to just ponder about it. What's interesting though, and maybe we'll get to it, but the things that I studied in grad school were all the pondery things, but like I wanted to get to the bottom of them, right? Not just sort of live in that thinking about them space. And so yeah, I like, and that's why I also love data analysis because it allows you to get to the bottom of something and then you can go talk about it, right? I think for me also the being able to explain it and talk about it in like a shared language where other people go, huh, I also feel that, or I think that's right. This I loved. I love the shared kind of aha moment. And that's what I think is cool about science is that it is a common language and process that we can all use to like share a reality about the human experience or the way things are or the way things should be. And this is what I get a lot of like meaning out of that process.
We let's wind it back. We're in high school, man. We've like jumped
Sorry.
all the way ahead. Like, let's wind it back. So, because you do end up at Miami U and you do end up in psychology. Is that what you sort of went in thinking was going to happen?
hmm Yeah. Again, I think kind of just like that was the subject in school that I liked the most. I had college credit, right? I could skip Psych 101 or whatever. I didn't feel a strong pull toward much of anything else.
Hmm.
Um, and I think even declaring that as my major, I still didn't quite know what you could do with that.
Right.
But I felt like I needed to declare something, and I was a little bit ahead, and so even I think at that point I was even thinking like, oh, maybe I could graduate early, or something, right? So no, even then, and as we go through my college experience, you'll see it didn't stick really. Like we came back around to it, but yeah, no, it was still not purposeful. I really didn't have a plan there.
And did you sort of have a mind that clinical might be a thing, or this was just sort of like I'm enjoying wonking in this thing and I'm going to wonk in it?
I mean, I say again, like I didn't even know that there was like a distinction, you know? I mean, there's maybe a part of me that thought like I'm really good at talking with my friends about things and I like to help people. I'm a kind of this classic helper type of person. So, maybe I thought like psychology might allow me to help people,
Hmm.
but I still hadn't really thought about like there's a job role, like there's a role out there like a therapist or a clinician or something that I could do. It was still kind of abstract for me going in. Um, yeah, until I started taking classes. But I think going into it, yeah, I really didn't have a clear idea of what would come of it.
And then you get exposed to it. How does that sort of refine your understanding? So now, you're getting into this, you're starting to take the things. Did you, as you started to take things, have a sense of clinical research,
Yeah.
these directions?
Yeah, I almost immediately knew that research is what I wanted to do.
Mhm.
So it's a little bit of a journey. So we'll go on a journey. But like I remember my first semester, um I took like a biopsych class. I think it was biopsychology. Um, and I had the opportunity, they of course in those classes they always say like raise your hand if you want to be an RA and like we'll find you a lab to be in. And so, I did the whole thing. And again, I didn't even really know what I was signing up for. I think even at that point, I didn't realize that psychology departments do research like as a job, and so it was just like, sure, it sounds fun. Um, and I ended up getting put in a lab that was studying like olfactory neurons in the hippocampus of rabbits, which was like, I mean, it's so far from what I do now. But I remember the first time walking into that lab, like on the third floor, and there's like machinery, and I still sit like I have like an episodic memory of it, of like the whirring sound of the big computers and the machines that were like puffing into rabbits' eyes and all sorts of stuff. And I remember my first task was to like set up the surgery station to like get the no electrode like into the brain and everyone had lab coats on, and I remember sitting in like a quiet room where there's like a continuous printout of like the EEG or something, and I do remember thinking like, what is this? Like this, I didn't like. This is at a college, like this is at college. I mean, it was like a world that I had just no idea existed, but I do remember the excitement of like, there's like discovery happening here. That felt very enticing to me. So I was in that lab for, a little while. Like first semester for freshman year, I didn't stick around long. It was kind of just like a teaser. Um, but I think right away, yeah, I mean, I knew I wanted to learn all of the all of the things that have been learned through this thing called research that like I had just been then exposed to kind of for the first time. Yeah.
And so it wasn't the olfactory rabbits so much as the like, well, there's a process of, to use your earlier word, discovery here, right? Like, so this may not be the lab for me, but something in this realm is feeling like it's clicking.
Yeah, something is like this process, right? That this feels more fun to me than any other kind of like educational class or experience I've had, right? I
Mm.
learning from a textbook, writing an essay, writing a poem, like even, I took philosophy, did, whatever. As enjoyable as many of those subjects were, like the process of research to me felt like this is where the real learning, like this is where the real stuff is happening. And I did feel that early on. I think even then still I didn't know that like there's a path for me there or that people do this as a job. But definitely had this feeling that this is I like this. Yeah.
And so then you get closer to senior year, and you're having to think about life beyond college and things that are going to happen next. Do you have a sense then that this is a job that people do, or is it
Yeah.
still sort of amorphous?
Yeah, by then I did, but lots of things happened in between. I switched to pre-med because I thought maybe I can do research at a hospital. Like I started thinking, I can put my sort of helper personality, and also I was kind of attracted by like this high status job. Like it would make my parents happy to be a doctor. But I was starting to I remember going to like the career counseling center at Miami and like taking a quiz or something and it pointed at like research doctor or something like that. And I thought, do doctors do that? Like, can I
Is that a
do?
thing?
Yeah. So I was like, well, I'm switching to pre-med. Okay. Then I hated chemistry, right? Like I had to go to, organic chem or something.
Organic
Like
chemistry, the
I was
slayer of
like,
doctors.
absolutely not. Like there's nope, this is not it. And I think that even turned me off a little. Um, and I actually, so around that time in college, I also joined the marching band. I joined the marching band because I did marching band all through high school. Very competitive marching band, right? Like it was like,
Big deal.
not like drumline like you see on the movies, like real competitive marching band. I missed it. And so I actually joined the marching band and auditioned for the music department like full on 360. And got in, got a scholarship, and so I decided I was going to be a music ed major. I wanted to be a
Okay.
music teacher, and I was doing steel drum, I was doing steel band and African ensembles, and what I really wanted to do was like teach world music
Mm.
to high school kids or whatever, and some drumline stuff on the side. Um, then I realized that most of my peers were being sent to jobs in like Podunk, Ohio to teach sixth grade orchestra.
Right.
And so I was like, well, that's not what I'm going to do. So then I thought, well, maybe I can do research in music. So I explored like cultural anthropology or musicoethnography or something, where I like maybe I can like research the culture of music. And that kind of like didn't pan out. It all came back around. So long story short, I went on a trip to Korea with like a campus organization, I looked around and realized, why can I not differentiate the faces of the people here? Like,
Mm.
that's a weird phenomenon that everyone looks the same. Came back to Miami. It turns out Kurt Hugenberg was at Miami, who is like the leading expert on the cross-race face recognition effect, right?
Right.
And I was like, this guy like makes a living studying this one thing. And so I emailed him, got into the lab, and that's really where it all changed, right? I got in the lab there. He let me run some studies myself. I presented a poster at APS as an undergrad. Um, you know, and I just felt like a grad student. I was like, there's grad students in here. We're all having lab meetings. I'm just this sort of like senior undergrad guy. But I remember like my first poster I made, I put it up in my room, my apartment, like on the wall, like a piece of pride. And yeah, so by the senior year, I dropped the music major. I went back to psych. I had enough credit to kind of finish up. But then is when I knew this is definitely what I want to do. I get to discuss, like, I get to ask questions that are interesting to me and like uncover the answer. And I'm sometimes the first person to know the answer to those things, and then I get to go share it with a bunch of people, and then ask even more questions. And so this is when I fell in love with it. And thanks to Kurt, I mean, he was an incredible mentor to invite this like young senior guy in who kind of probably didn't really know what he was doing. Yeah, all props to him for supporting me in that time. Yeah.
And so well, by the end, you're convicted. You're like,
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what it is, but I know it's psych and I know it's research and I know it's sort of over here and it's probably not neuro, it's probably more,
Kind of
social.
social
Yeah.
cognitive, yeah, socially. Yep, exactly. I knew that, of course I had also taken like social psych and all these things at that point and definitely knew, okay, not developmental, not this. I wanted to do social. I got to ask questions that I actually asked myself in regular life. And like now I get to have a whole apparatus for like studying these things and learning the answers to these things. And there's a job. Yeah, I knew right away this is what I wanted to do.
That's awesome. And
Yeah.
so then you graduate, right? Then it's sort of like, all right, well now the rubber's hit the road. I gotta do something with this. What was that emotionally like for you to sort of come out and be like, okay, academia is over. Like, we're on to the next step here.
It was exciting because I did sort of for the first time feel like that there was something like there was a path, right? That I wasn't just looking for the thing that was right for me. It felt like I knew it was right for me. And I had taken a job as a statistician, because I also got like a minor in quant. So I took a job as a statistician in LA at UCLA, like a research unit there. And so here I am in Ohio, and I'm packing up my two-door Honda Civic with like anything that can fit in there to drive to California to do like statistics at UCLA. I mean, it felt like a movie. So, and I was, yeah, it felt very exciting that there was sort of endless possibility for me to discover again, right? It's very sort of discovery, but yeah, I was excited about it. Um, and I think I knew at that time I wanted to go to grad school, but it was too late, right? I had sort of missed by the time I switched back to psych and all that, I had sort of missed the window. So that's why I took this job in between, and yeah, and drove out to UCLA by myself, um, and sat in a cinder block room with a couple other nerdy people in a little research stats, like a stats unit, and we were studying. Um, Various topics around psychopharmacology, like depression and cytokine reactions and whatever. But again, for me, it was less about the subject matter and more about the fact that I could apply my stat skills that I had acquired at that point to like uncover things that hadn't been discovered yet. And has always been the most exciting part about it for me. Like I didn't ever really attach super strongly to a subject or a research topic. I just loved the process of uncovering things that weren't known. Yeah.
Mhm. That makes total sense. And there's a warm theme. We go from Miami to LA. You're like clearly know what we like. How was and did that sort of as you encountered a new research unit and you're playing a more quantitative role, did that, there's a world where like Matt goes down that road and he becomes like, you know, sort of a quant researcher and like that's the way he goes. What do you think maybe told you that you weren't going to go do that?
hmm So, at UCLA, I volunteered. Like I found a lab in the psych department to volunteer in. So this is also like, I mean, it's like you look back. I mean, whatever you look back and like see, purpose in the thing, but like so it's just all sort of random, right? I just happened to have gone on the psych website and found a professor that was like doing some cool stuff. It turned out so it was Janessa Shapiro.
Oh,
She's since passed, but she was brand new at UCLA. building her lab, and she studied stereotyping and prejudice. And I was just like, can I come to your lab meetings? And again, I went to the lab meetings, but then I got super interested in some of the topics that they were studying and, ended up running some of my own research with her. Like, again, she didn't have to do that, right? New professors with startup money and their own grad students, their own stuff, like, you don't have time to just like let some stranger like run research in your lab. But we ended up publishing a paper together that year. Um, and again, that's sort of what told me, okay, no, like I don't want to just sit behind the computer and crunch numbers. I sort of like it, but it went back to me knowing I want to ask my own questions and design the research that I know will get me the answer that is satisfactory to me and like have my hands in it all. Like I wanted to have my hands in it all. So thanks to Janessa for letting me go do that. Um, and yeah, that also was one of those crucial moments where it pushed me down that path of social psych.
Well, and also what I'm hearing is there's a desire, to I'd rather somebody run something small end to end than big as a cog, right? I don't want to go join, you know, the Minnesota teen study and like, become one of their researchers, right? Like I have questions and I would like to get my questions answered. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's very insightful. I mean, couldn't have said it better myself. And I think that's how also grad school played out.
Mhm.
Um, I was never really interested in just like joining someone's lab and running like the next version of the study that they have on their backlog. Like that's just wasn't what I wanted to do. And it's very apparent. I mean, it also ended up being causing some challenges because I couldn't just like hitch a ride to my mentor and crank publications out as like an author on a 5 author list or whatever. Like I wanted to be first author on 12 study packages that I published once a year. That's how I wanted to do science. And I wanted to ask questions about things that on Google Scholar had nothing on there.
Right.
That's what I want. That's how I wanted to do it. I mean, it's challenging, especially as a grad student, because you're not going to get a job doing that. I
Right.
mean, you need a long pub list and you need whatever, but it didn't matter to me. Like I was just more intrinsically motivated by the things that I wanted to learn, and the way I wanted to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's an underestimation, I think, in the degree to which academia really asks you to build the next brick, right? Rather than like your own wall. They're like, cool, we have this brick and that brick. Here is the next logical brick.
Right.
Like your sponsor is now too old to build that brick. You go build that brick as their
Right.
student, right? And you have these sort of diasporic lineages of like, so and so student, so and so, and it means something to say like, oh, Gergerenzer was my grad advisor or something, and that means adherence to a particular kind of thing. And what I'm hearing from you is like, I just had a set of questions I was interested in. I didn't care how popular they are. I didn't care that other people were interested in those questions. I didn't care if other people had I just wanted to pursue the unknown things that I wanted to pursue.
Right. That's exactly. And to my advisor's credit, right? So my advisor at KU was Monica Biernat. She studied also stereotyping and prejudice. I mean, obviously I'm coming from Janessa's lab at UCLA, and so like that's what I applied around and cross race effect stuff. And so I kind of entered in like I'm going to do stereotyping and prejudice. Within the first 6 months, I was like, Monica, I want to study nostalgia. And she was like, okay,
It's not really
well,
what I brought here to do, man.
yeah. And like, no one here studies that. Like, are you sure that you want to do that? And I said, yeah, I'm obsessed with it. Like, there were some events that happened and, some things that kind of led me to wonder, why am I so nostalgic about this and that? And I went on Google Scholar and there's nothing there. And I was like, I just became obsessed with needing to know what that feeling is and how it works and why we have it. And yeah, I mean, again, to Monica's credit, she's like, go for it. Let me know how I can support you. So I also got very lucky, I think, with mentors and advisors along the way who had no stake in they had no stake in the game or whatever, right? They were like, sure, go for it. Um, and that's not always the case, right? There are
Sure.
many advisors out there who are like, no, we study this here, and that's what you're going to study here. And again, maybe nothing wrong with that, but I just got very lucky that my advisors sort of let me do my own thing.
And I think that is, we're approaching 50 of these episodes. So you can start to pull some patterns out, even if it's called an N of one. And certainly one of those patterns is, broad horizontal interest. Like if you look at my early papers, I had published before I even got into the PhD program. I think I had probably 4 or 5 or 6 public papers under my belt, but none of them were really related to each other. They were just a random collection of things that I had been interested in at
Right.
one point or another, and got enough gumption up to do, 3 or 4 studies in, and then published a quick paper about. But they aren't the sort of plodding, methodical thing that is rewarded in in academia, where you sort of like you do a bias paper and everybody knows you're the bias guy, and then you do the next bias paper and you're
Right,
Tony
right, right.
Greenwald, and you do the next bias paper, right?
Like you tweak one, you t tweak one aspect of condition C and like write a whole other paper on it. And, which again, like the university incentivizes this because we are like the goal of the university is to build up a large and reliable store of knowledge, right? So like we probably don't want to miss any small corners of something. We probably do want to make sure that the theories are holding up over repeated tests and small changes. And, there's probably something good about that. But that, I don't know. Yeah, it like never, it was never satisfying to me to like, do a 12 study paper around one aspect of nostalgia and then imagine that for the next 20 years, I'll just be like circling around that thing. I mean, it felt to me like I got my question answered, and now I want to do the next question, right? Now I kind of want to dig in and obsess over the next thing. So yeah, and I don't know. I don't know if, again, I don't know if that's good or bad that academia doesn't incentivize it that way or not. Or I mean, I think probably plenty of people do promote slow science and kind of, would agree that maybe the incentive structure in academia is maybe not conducive to the right kind of stuff. But yeah, I always just found myself on the side of wanting to go slower and really dig in on one thing and then sort of go on to the next one.
Yeah. And did you, as you're in school, do you have a sense that this might lead you out of academia, or are you like, no, I'm going to be the wild, I'm going to be the wild tangent professor. So I'm still on the academic track, but I'm going to be the weird
Right.
academic. Like,
Yeah.
where do you sort of
Me-
figure out like, nope, maybe I'm just not an academic?
Sure. Wow, it took me a long time to get there. I mean, when I got, I went to KU in 2009, 2010. I
Right.
mean, at that time, like no one thought that like you could be a psychologist at Facebook or something. Like no, that just wasn't even a thing, right? I mean, and I heard you say this on some of the other episodes, like the idea that you could do anything else was so foreign. And so yeah, I mean, I knew like it's gonna be professor, but I did start thinking, but what kind of professor am I gonna be? And I, for better or worse, like really admired the terror management guys. Like, you know, Sheldon Solomon and these guys, they'd show up to conferences in tie-dye t-shirts and jean shorts like ripped to shreds and hadn't didn't look like they hadn't showered in years. And but they're up there on the stage, with lots of influence and like they seem to have just kind of not cared how you were supposed to do things. Again, for better or worse, right? There's lots of critique of that theory and so on. But I I liked that they just said, we just really like this human challenge and question. And so like we're not gonna really play the game. Like all we just want to know what's going on with this human experience thing.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna wear a suit to the conference. And so I there were parts of me that thought like if I could ever get to the point in my career where I'm at the conference in jean shorts, then I feel like I will have made it as the kind of professor that I want to be. So yeah, I had started thinking about it, but the idea of jumping out didn't come until much later.
And it's hard to be an outsider in an insider's game. how are you processing that? Like, did you feel outsidery? I know you had great advisors who were sort of giving you that permission, but you're also a cohort of grad students. You have other things going on. Like, that's a really challenging place to be emotionally. What was that like for you?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, definitely felt a little, I mean, my publication list wasn't as long. Um, I felt like I wasn't doing some of the things you're supposed to do, like getting really excited about grants and I felt like probably my peers were going to be more competitive than me on the job market. I also felt like some of my peers were like a lot smarter, right? Like I think or just like better academics. And yeah, there was a part of me that felt that way. Um, I don't know if it really affected me deeply emotionally, but there was maybe some like jealousy there that
Hmm.
like, you kind of have to contend with like, all right, well, maybe I'm never going to be that guy with like 40 publications, applying to jobs or whatever. Um, so yeah, there was some of that. I mean, there was maybe a little bit of a feeling that I was closing some doors. I also like didn't particularly like networking at conferences. Like I wasn't ever really invited to like the special side conferences that happen and all that. Like I don't know. And so yeah, there was maybe like some jealousy or like I kind of wish that I was, but like I know deep down that I don't really want that. So there was some conflict there, yeah.
Well, and it is I mean, I think wisely put, it's entirely possible to be jealous of something you don't want, right?
Sure,
Right. It's
sure.
entirely possible to be like, I objectively know that I do not want that thing, but I'm just a little pissed off that you have it and I don't.
Right. And even like I sort of envy your being okay with it, right?
Yeah.
Like I sort of envy you that you kind of get to run the fourth and fifth study in your advisor's line and then put your name as second author and then like get 10 of those a year and then like get invited to the conference and like do the symposium and like there's like I sort of envy that you're doing it that way even though I know I don't want that. I wouldn't be really happy doing that, but there's some envy there.
But it
uh,
does take you a while to sort of decide that you're going to step out of it. I mean,
mhm.
you graduate, you do postdoc, right? You go
Yeah.
off to become a professor.
Yeah.
Like, what was, you're at University of Florida, you're an assistant professor now. What told you like, hey, I need to, this is not going to be a lifelong
Yeah.
happy sort of, I'm not
Yeah.
going to be the guy in jean shorts and a tie-dye
I
shirt.
tried. I tried. I mean, Florida was a great place, right? Of all the places that I could have ended up, that was a great job, right? I had a lot of freedom. I had a lot of resources. My students were incredible. The undergrads there are incredibly smart. My grad students came in with amazing ideas, groundbreaking ideas. I looked for people who wanted to start new theories, and so it was a great place to be. I think for me, I started like consulting my values and asking, is there a mismatch
Mm.
here? Which I now encourage a lot of people to do who are like in transition or looking to leave academia or even like trying to switch roles. Often like take a big step back and just ask what it is that you actually want out of life. And I realized that just the university system as a whole, like, didn't seem to kind of support the things I wanted to do, right? It came up to my third year review, and I was like having to put together my third year review packet, which is like your pre-tenure packet, which is more or less like applying for the job again. And then, but you're not, but it's like not for anything. It's like you submit this huge packet, and then they tell you, yeah, it looks like you're on track. And then that packet just like goes away. And then 2 years later, you have to do it all over again. And I'm like, what is this? Like, why can't I just be judged on like the impact that my research has been having, like, or the students that I'm bringing into the fold and helping them become successful? Like, what is this kind of bureaucratic, like the bureaucracy of science started to bother me, and the fact that my students weren't getting paid enough and the fact that I was being like asked to do unpaid labor. It was sort of like all of there were like things that started coming in to play where I thought the ROI on my efforts here are like it's like turning negative. It's taking away from that initial intrinsic joy of discovery, and it's becoming something kind of different. Um, and not to mention paywalls behind papers and grants that you have to write, and just all the things. It just like coalesced. I mean, the final story is that I remember being asked to review a paper, um, and I had like used up all my service hours for the year, and so I responded with something like, I don't have any service hours left, but I'll review for my consulting fee. It'll be this amount for like this many hours. And that editor got so mad that I was even suggesting such a thing. And I'm like, if, do I want to be 60 in this same office, like angry that I'm still not being valued for my time and that, whatever. It just sort of felt like my time isn't being valued. Like there's the value, like the balance has gotten off somewhere.
Yeah.
And I felt like it just wasn't the right place for me to do this thing that I find so much joy in doing anymore. So yeah, that's what tipped it for me.
Yeah, as bizarre as it sounds to people, you know, academia, at least as practiced in universities, is like weird arts capitalism, right? Like there's lots of pay, and pay can mean lots of things here. It can mean notoriety, it can mean lots of things, but it's like disproportionately a few people at the top of a pyramid and then a bunch of like basically unpaid laborers down here at
Totally.
the money you make as a grad student is not a living wage. I mean, you're doing
Yeah.
the most stressful, there's a reason people quit PhDs at
Yeah.
alarming rates. You're doing this
Yeah.
massively stressful job. You're trying to teach, you're trying to do all this research, and you're trying to like eat ramen.
I know it. And you have to realize that in 5 years you have to go get a job with like maybe one publication if you're lucky or something. And yeah, it's like, it's a pyramid scheme, right? In a way. And I don't like every system's like got its issues. Like and I think there were plenty of my peers who felt like I want to stick it out here because I think maybe I could even change it some, right? I can, but I didn't have that urge, right? I felt like I don't even think I could be an effective change agent here because I'm whatever, too frustrated or don't know the right people or whatever it was. And so, I just decided that it wasn't, yeah, I wasn't right. It wasn't a right fit.
And then so when you make that decision, you sort of have this revelation that like I'm just in too angry a place and I'm not going to be effective. You start looking out at the general job market. Like, how do you start to make your way out of the system that you're now quite, I quit into a year into my PhD. I was like, nope, right? Like,
Right.
so I knew
Right.
early.
Right.
You're deep in the system. How did you sort of work your way out of the system back into a place that made you happier?
Yeah. Again, it feels like luck. Um, One of my postdoc colleagues from Cologne, Jehan Sparks, also a brilliant behavioral scientist. She's at Instagram, Meta, and at some other place, but she was at Calm. So she left the postdoc for Calm, and she was doing behavioral science at Calm. They had a small behavioral science team there. Um, and I remember at SPSP that year in San Francisco, we met up like for some food or something, and she was like, "Hey, like we're hiring a biostatistician. Like, are you interested?" And I mean, at that time, I had been like, I kind of knew I wanted to leave, but I didn't know what that looked like practically.
Mm-hmm.
And that night, I went back to my hotel room and I applied to the job, like almost as a joke, like almost like, well, Jahan will see my resume, so like maybe there's a chance.
Yeah.
And within 2 months, I left. So it was very quick and kind of serendipitous. I mean, I guess attests to the value of like knowing good people who are similar to you and kind of have the same vision and goals you do. Um, but yeah, I mean, again, thanks to Jahan for, kind of pushing that along. Um, but so it wasn't exactly purposeful. But once I got a taste, like once I kind of interviewed and saw how that team worked and, sort of saw what science looks like inside an organization like that, it was like, like once you sort of decide that your relationship is over, like there's no going back kind of, it felt sort of like that. Like
You're like, I should have been doing this all along.
why why did I just now find out about this? Um, so yeah, it was serendipitous. And I just kind of capitalized on that lucky moment, I think. Yeah.
And so when you got into Calm, it clicked quickly. You felt quickly like, oh yeah, this is closer to where I want to be.
Yeah, I think so because I mean I had zero product sense, right? Like I was definitely coming in blind. But fortunately that team was like more of an academic behavioral science sort of team, and I was responsible for running stats for the papers that we were writing. So it was a nice kind of foot in the door, but I felt like we're doing real, like this is like real impactful discovery now, right? Like we're doing this for a purpose. There's a business problem to solve. Some of this stuff is even tied to like revenue of this Fortune 100 company that we're partnering with. And like we just wrote a paper in 3 weeks. What? Like how did that happen? So I think it's like all the weight of academia was almost sort of lifted. And even if like biostatistician wasn't the title I wanted, it sort of didn't matter. Like I was back in this world of there's endless discovery here. There's so much data I can dig into. We can like learn so much about how people go through life, using this app where we can like, sort of implement science and learn things that would never have been possible in the controlled lab. Um, and yes, it felt like an immediate, and all the other benefits that come with a sort of a corporate job, the compensation and everything else. I was like, this is like fun, and my time feels like it's being valued, and my experience is being valued, and I have like really smart colleagues and teammates. Surprisingly, academia was like very lonely. It's like supposed to be super collaborative, but it's not really. You kind of just like sit in your office and write papers all day. And this felt like every day we were on stand-ups and doing all this stuff. And so yeah, immediately it felt like vibrant and fun again for me.
Yeah, there's this weird, I mean, academia is inherently competitive. There's only so many papers that can come out. There are only so many studies that can get run. I had turned down, even though I ended up at Cornell because my advisor moved, I had turned down Cornell because I was just like, ooh, these people are like not, this is not going to go well for me. And, we have this ironic vision of like, capitalist for-profit companies that's like rather cutthroat places sort of in the like, 80s Wall Street sort of version of what the world is. But to your point, in a technology company, it's broadly large cross-functional teams that are trying collectively to move a ball down the field. It's a hard ball to move. But there is a lot of collaboration. It's not to say
Right.
you can't feel lonely inside those, but I think but it is a very different. There's no inherent competition in the same way
Right.
that there
Right.
is.
There's a common enemy, right? I mean, the common enemy inside an org is all the things you don't know, right? It's like the space between the 0 to 1. And we're all trying to solve the same problem and remove the same barriers and get people to do the same things. And in academia, there is no common enemy. Well, I mean, we're all just enemies of each other trying to publish the better paper or like critique the other person's theory or like win the grant. And so yeah, I felt like the world of industry felt to me so much more collaborative, and communal in a way. Yes, this was definitely a surprise also because you're kind of told like, oh, all they care about is money and like they'll do anything and cut you if you whatever. But it never felt that way to me. It hasn't felt that way to me.
Yeah. It's one of those weird movies, right? Where like the first half of the movie is people telling you how scary the woods are and then getting into the woods and going like, actually, I'm pretty sure you people were the scary ones.
Yeah, right, right.
Like,
Yeah, what woods were you talking about? Because this is
yeah,
not, that's yeah, right.
those nymphs seem great to me. I don't know what's going on with you.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, and so you're at Calm, which is, and that was a particular moment in history where it was a great time to be at a startup, right? Calm had a team, Headspace had a team. There were sets of people that were starting to interrogate this sort of behavioral science. Obviously health tech has been a big bastion of applied behavioral science. Um, And so it was a great time. And eventually you decide to sort of, the next step is Noom, right? Which is sort of in that relatedly very clear behavioral change, health sort of version. You take on a much more leadership role at
Yep.
Noom. Um, by the time you got to Noom, were you like, nope, this is it, and I am on my way, and this is the thing that I'm doing?
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, I knew that this space is the space I wanted to be in. I started to like learn about behavioral scientists and thought leaders in the space. Like I at Noom is when I read your book for the first time. I was like meeting with Amy Booker and like learning what she's doing and like, oh, Robert Meza like has these frameworks. And yeah, I started learning that there's a world like that's when I think I learned of the world of behavioral science at
Mm,
Noom. Because at Noom, I also when I went from Calm to Noom, my role at Noom was also research statistician. So I was on a team called academic research or something like that. Um, Shortly after I got there, it kind of converted into behavioral science a little more broadly. And I started thinking, I don't know if I want to just be behind an R script all day.
yeah.
It's too fun for me to be in a Figma with designers or to sit at the strategy table with the blank design document and like start from scratch with a PM. I learned that I really liked being in that cross-functional space, way upstream of execution, right? I was sort of like getting tired of execution, and I wanted to be further up strategy. I really enjoyed the strategy side, especially that the shared experience part kind of comes back in. This is one of my core values. I like it when we're all in the same room and I can bring the scientific perspective as a lens, and like I might use a theory or a framework or something, and if all of us go, huh, like that might work, let's do that, right? And then the PM goes here and the designer goes there, whatever. I love this feeling. And so that's yeah, at Noom, I kind of moved out of fundamental science and execution into a little bit more of this high level behavioral science, behavioral design, kind of strategic consulting kind of role. And that's when I fell in love with this kind of role, this kind of work, being kind of at the idea table as opposed to the like execution table.
Yeah, one of the ways we haven't talked about it is, moving from build the thing right to build the right thing.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. That
You're sort of,
resonates. Mm.
you're sort of on the construction crew for a while there, and then at some point, you start doing a little more architecting where you're sort of saying like, okay, well, what is this? What is the point of this building in the first place, and what are we even trying to accomplish here? Which is your
Mhm.
point earlier, going, all the way back to being a 7-year-old, you were interested in that sort of deeper version of the question, right?
Right.
Not just how we do this, but why are we doing this, and what is powering this, and why is this even worth doing, and what sort of, one of the thing I think is emerging. We have a lot of behavioral scientists in the newer generation, or very good behavioral scientists, but maybe not great executives, right? I was talking to somebody the other day who was sort of pointing out that like I was the first behavioral scientist they'd ever met that had managed 500 people. And I was like, I mean, that's just like being an executive. It's like that's like a part of, it doesn't really matter if you're the chief people officer, or the chief product officer, or whatever. Like you're at some point, you get to some level where you have to just have this sort of, that particular sort of skill set. And, as you move from Calm to Noom and you and I start having different kinds of conversations that were much more about like, how do we even structure this thing that we're trying to do here?
Right.
um, is such an important part of growing the field of behavioral science, because we need people.
Mhm.
If we are just our jockeys forever, that probably doesn't serve the field particularly well.
I totally agree. I mean, like Robert had a post last week or something about this kind of topic on LinkedIn, and I remember my comment was something like, I think I also am pretty optimistic about the field. Like people say right now that like UX is really tough and like UX is still like there's layoffs happening or whatever, but I actually don't see it as like UX is disappearing. I see it more as like I think product leaders and thought leaders in general are kind of getting smart to the idea that like we can't just like load up 30 PhDs at the bottom of the funnel on the execution side and just expect that like like the product will flow through them and out on the other side comes like the best thing possible, right? It's like you leave so much value on the table when you stack all those people at the bottom of the funnel. And I think we're kind of getting smart to the idea that behavioral science is like a way of solving problems, right? It's not like a job title, right? It's not like a role necessarily. It's like a way of doing things, and that way of doing things makes, the PM better, the CEO better, the strategist, the customer support. Like it's a way of informing our way of solving problems. And in that way, then we should like move all those people up, up the funnel. And I'm seeing a little bit more of that. I don't know if you've noticed this at all, but like I see a lot more corporate strategy roles on LinkedIn that like in the job description, it's like hypothesis testing and like finding signal and noise. And, because I think we're all getting smart to like, oh, someone who, and I say this a lot to people, being an academic is very similar to being an entrepreneur, right? You start with nothing. You have no information about the thing you're studying, and you end with something. And you have to convince people that the something you have is like the right something. And the way to get there is through this methodical, systematic, evidence generation process. But like that's also the right way to build a startup. That's also the right way to build a team. That's also the right way to. So I think we're all kind of getting smart to that. And maybe like the third wave of behavioral science is behavioral strategy or something. Like we went from UX to behavioral design to, I think there's even like a higher funnel upstream of all that where behavioral science is going to start kind of popping its head up. And I'm excited about that world, especially in this generative world where like agents can run surveys and there's a lot of that execution work can be done, but like you need the strategists in the room to sort of figure out how to use that stuff, why we should use it, what's even the right question to ask, what's the prompt. So I think I'm excited about that world where behavioral science is moving upstream.
Yeah. I think, the nice thing about history repeating itself is we've seen the same thing with data science, right? When
Sure.
I happened to be out lecturing yesterday at Columbia, I had this sort of standing lecture about behavioral science in one of the classes in the business school. And I always make this point that like the best way to interpret the sort of history of applied behavioral science in business is to think about data science in business, right? Where, you know, 25 years ago, there were lots of leaders that would have said you didn't need data and it was all about taste making and having a good entrepreneurial sense of and a good intuition. And we sort of, we're in love with these stories of the Steve Jobs of the world who just kind of in their heart know the right thing for people. And it would be unthinkable to be a senior leader in a major company today and not have at least some rudimentary understanding of data science, right?
Hmm.
That would just be unthinkable. And that was 25 years. And so, I do certainly think we could get to a place where it would be equally unthinkable for you to be a serious senior executive and not have at least some concept of behavior as an outcome, science as a
Hmm.
process,
Hmm. Hmm.
versions of doing things. Maybe not full on applied behavioral scientists in the way that you and I do it in a very structured, but you have
Right.
at least some sense of how to work with those people, manage those people, bring those people in, include them in the conversation. And
Yeah.
that, to your point, drives them up funnel, right? Brings those
Right.
people in earlier in the conversation.
Right. I mean, chief behavior officer is like a rare job, right? I mean, Amy's role there is like not common. I mean, I have a question for you. Do you feel like data science had similar, like I feel like there's some kind of barriers to entry for behavior. I feel like we almost have to like evangelize the value. Do you feel like data science had a similar
Oh
like,
yeah.
yeah.
I remember those days. Like,
Okay.
we absolutely, because
Okay.
people were absolutely convinced by the Jobs model of the world that was just like, no, taste making is everything. And people, the sort of apocryphal, people don't know what they want. They'll just tell you a faster horse. Like, you can't get this out of people. You just have to know it in your soul and then like go do the thing, which it took time to show people that like, no, turns out if you, I mean, and early data science really was at the bottom of the, you talked about the bottom of the funnel.
Mhm.
Where was data science? It was down here in measurement,
Right.
right? It was all the way at the, hey, we've already done it. Just tell us how well we did it,
Hmm.
right? And now, you know, data science is way up funnel, right?
Right.
Like as we make strategic decisions, we're
Right.
looking
Right.
at we're modeling in particular as we're looking at the numbers, we're thinking about these things, we're running, real world tests in various ways. To your point with AI, we're running, synthetic user tests, right, on large populations to see, is there legs to a strategic to strategic offering. So I do think I see that
Cool.
possibility. But we're
Yeah.
getting away. This is not the podcast. We are we're going to do a special episode on behavioral science executives and sort of
Okay.
like this large thing. So we'll
Cool.
stay tuned and you can
Yeah,
come
yeah.
debate it with us. But this is about you. So you're at Calm, and Calm is really about being an academic, but in a for-profit system. Then you go to Noom, and you're much more. I'm not an academic. I'm playing a broad, horizontal, sort of consultative role. And now you're at Hive, right?
Hmm.
Working with other behavioral scientists, obviously our mutual friend Julie and folks, sort of starting to do things. And I know you guys are still sort of stealthy and quiet and not quite ready to talk about it. But what is it like, leaving aside what you're building? What is it like to now be in an environment where you're working with a lot of other very senior behavioral scientists? Because that's not the case a lot of the time. A lot of the time,
Hmm.
you're cross-functionally working with a lot of different people. You don't necessarily have
Yeah.
a cohort. Now you have a cohort, right? Julie and other folks. What's that like for you?
It's really cool. I mean, it's like, I mean, we have like lab meetings like at work, and we have a journal club, so it's like it's fun to be sort of back in academia. But like, I mean, we all from the academic world, we all sort of resent that like we do a lot of work to like find the truth and give people the tools and resources they would need to like build the right kinds of products. But of course, like no one actually ever then reads the paper or whatever. So it's kind of nice to be back in the world that feels kind of academic, but we're going like direct to consumer in a way, right? Like we're sort of side skirting the academic institution and sort of taking real core fundamental psychological science directly to, And so and I think that's sort of like always our dream. Like I hope that the research I do at the university somehow makes the world a better place, right? Someone uses it someday, right? Like ultimately that would be like the measure of success. And now it's really, really fun to sit in a room, like scope out a bifactor SEM model on something or other, productize it, pull it into some customer problem, wrap it up into a product thing, and then go beta test it and then see it actually work all in the matter of like, a month or two. And it really does feel like putting the science I was used to doing for most of my life to work the way that I always wanted it to go to work.
Mhm.
And with really smart people. I mean, the collection of people we have there, it's like, how did all of these people end up in the same room? Right? I mean, yeah, we're building a company with six out of the 10 people have PhDs, right, in social psychology. So like it's pretty cool to be in that environment for sure. It's like very energizing.
That's awesome. Well, look, thank you for sharing your story with us because I do think it's, as I said, we're getting close to 50 of these, but every story is unique and yours is really unique. You got very far down the academic pathway before you were able to sort of to and pivot to what has been a very, very successful career on the private side. And I appreciate you sort of sharing that journey and that struggle with people,
Yeah.
even when it is hard, even when you're the tie-dye guy in a room full of folks that maybe aren't seeing it the same way that you are. Uh, I'm so glad that you have found your way to a good place, and so excited to see as Highline comes a little more public and a little more public and a little more public, what awesome things you're able to bring to the world. So
I
such
really,
it's
yeah,
fun to see you.
really appreciate the opportunity. It's good to see you again and chat again. I appreciate it.
I like that you're repping Hive,
Yeah.
folks. You
Everyone
can
go check it out. You can visit us on the web, obviously, and check out what we do.
Yes, and we I think Julie was not ready to. I think Julie was also in stealth mode last time we invited her. We'll get her on the
Yeah, I
podcast
mean
as
we're
well.
sort of in and out of it and finding kind of the right time and so yeah, but I would reach out again. She'll
Yeah,
throw
we're gonna get Julie on here because she's another fantastic story, of how behavioral science comes into the world. And
yeah.
special episode soon, we'll talk about behavioral science executives.
I look forward to that
We'll
one.
get you on to debate it with some of the rest of us.
Yeah, looking forward to that.
Well, Matt, thank you so much for sharing your story on an N of one.
Cool. Thanks, Matt.